Hello, welcome to our video. My name is Emmanuel.
And I am Johnny Widodo.
We are from the University of the West Indies.
In this first part, I will be talking about theory of knowledge. In epistemology, the study of the theory of knowledge is among the most important areas of philosophy. The question that is addressed included the following. What is knowledge? The first problem encountered in epistemology is that of defining knowledge. Much of the time, philosophers use the tripartite theory knowledge, which analyzes knowledge as justified through belief, as a working model. Rival analyses of knowledge have been proposed, but there is as yet no consensus on what knowledge is. This fundamental question of epistemology remains unsolved. Though philosophers are unable to provide a generally accepted analysis of knowledge, we all understand roughly what we are talking about when we use words such as knowledge. Thankfully, this means that it is possible to get on with epistemology, leaving unsolved the fundamental question as to what knowledge is. From where do we get our knowledge? A second important issue in epistemology concerns the ultimate source of our knowledge. There are two traditions: the empiricism, which holds that our knowledge is primarily based on our experiences or come through with perception through our senses. And the second is rationalism, which holds that our knowledge is primarily based in reason alone. Although the modern scientific worldview borrows heavily from empiricism, there are reasons for thinking that as a synthesis of the two traditions is more plausibly than either of them individually. How are our beliefs justified? There are better and worse ways to form beliefs. In general terms, it is important to consider evidence when deciding what to believe, because by doing so, we are more likely to form beliefs that are true. Precisely how this should work when we are justified in believing something and when we are not is another topic in the theory of knowledge. The three most prominent theories of epistemic justification are foundationalism, coherenticism, and reliabilism. And another question is, how do you perceive the world around us through our knowledge? Much of our knowledge, it seems, does come to us through our senses, through perception. Perception, though, is a complex process. The way that we experience the world may determine in part by the world, but it is also determined in part by us. We do not passively receive information through our senses. Arguably, we contribute just as much to our experiences as do the object that they are experiences of. How we are to understand the process of perception and how this should affect our understanding of the world that we inhabit is therefore vital for epistemology. Do you know anything at all? That's the main question. The area of epistemology that has captured most imagination is philosophical skepticism. Alongside the questions of what knowledge is and how we come to acquire, it is the question whether we do in fact know anything at all. There is a long philosophical tradition that says that we do not, and the argument in support of this position, though resisted by most, are remarkably difficult to refute. The most persistent problem in the theory of knowledge is not what knowledge is or what it comes from, but whether there is any such thing at all. Here I am going to talk about also the types of knowledge. Philosophers typically divide knowledge into three categories: personal, procedural, and propositional. It is the last of these proposition knowledge that primarily concerns philosophers. However, understanding the connections between the three types of knowledge can be helpful in clearly understanding what is and what is not being analyzed by the various theories of knowledge. Personal knowledge is the first type of knowledge, that knowing by acquaintance. Knowledge in this sense is to do with being familiar with something. Like for example, in order to know Emmanuel, one must have met him. And in order to know fear, one must experience it. In each of these cases, the word know being used to refer to knowledge by acquaintance. Personal knowledge does arguably involve possessing at least some propositional knowledge. If I have met Emmanuel, but I can't remember a single thing about him, then I probably will not claim to know him. In fact, knowing a person, in the sense required for knowledge by acquaintance, that seems to involve knowing a significant number of propositions about them. What is important is that personal knowledge involves more knowledge of proposition. No matter how much you tell about Emmanuel, no matter how many facts about him I learn, if I haven't met him, then I can't be said to know him in the sense required for personal knowledge. So personal knowledge that seems to be involved coming to know a certain number of propositions in particular way. The second type of knowledge is procedural knowledge. This knowledge can be called also knowledge how to do something. The claims to know how to jungle, how to drive are claims to have procedural knowledge. Procedural knowledge clearly differs from propositional knowledge. It is possible to know all the theory behind driving a car, to have all of the relevant propositional knowledge, without actually knowing how to drive a car, without having the procedural knowledge. You may know which pedal is the accelerator and which is the brake. You may know where the handbrake is and what it does. You may know where your blind spots are, when you need to check them, but until you get behind the wheel and learn how to apply all this theory, you do not know how to drive. So knowing how to drive involves possessing a skill, being able to do something which is very different to merely knowing a collection of facts. The third types of knowledge is propositional knowledge. Although there are several different types of knowledge, the primary concern of epistemology is propositional knowledge. This is knowledge of facts, knowledge that such and such is the case. The difference between the three types of knowledge is not as sharp as it might at first appear. Like personal knowledge, that seems to involve knowledge of at least some propositions. Simply having met someone is not enough to know them in the personal knowledge sense. You also have to know a few things about them in propositional knowledge sense. And in procedural knowledge also seems to involve some propositional knowledge. If you know how to drive a car in the procedural knowledge sense, then you probably know certain facts about driving, which way the car will go if you turn the steering wheel to the left and to the right. What is important is that propositional knowledge. It's not enough to give you either personal knowledge or procedural knowledge. Personal knowledge involves acquiring propositional knowledge in a certain way. And procedural knowledge may entail proposition knowledge, but the same proposition knowledge certainly does not entail procedural knowledge. So whatever the connection between the various types of knowledge there may be, however, it is proposition knowledge that is in view in most epistemology. Now, I'm going to share to you also about the tripartite theory of knowledge. There is a tradition that goes back as far as Plato that holds that three conditions must satisfy in order for one to possess knowledge. This account, known as the tripartite theory of knowledge, analyzes knowledge as justified through belief. The tripartite theory says that if you believe something with justification and it is true, then you know it, otherwise you do not. Belief is the first condition for knowledge. Unless one believes a thing, one cannot know. Even if something is true, and one has the excellent reason for believing that it is true. One cannot know without believing it. And the second is truth. If one knows a thing, then it must be true, no matter what, and no matter how well justified or sincere a belief. If it is not true, that is cannot constitute knowledge. If a long-held belief is discovered to be false, then one must concede that what was thought to be known was in fact not known. What is false cannot be known, knowledge must knowledge of truth. Then the justification is the third condition of knowledge. In order to know a thing, it is not enough to merely correctly believe to be true. One must also have a good research for doing so. Lucky guesses cannot constitute knowledge. We can only know what we have good reason to believe. So the tripartite theory of knowledge is intuitively very plausibly, and it is still used as a working model by philosophers most of the time. Thank you very much. This is the end of first part of our presentation, and now the next presentation we'll be talking about the theories of truth.